My wife, Ashley, and her lover, Ethan Hunter. Just thinking about them made my jaw tighten. Somebody must have forgotten that I used to be a Navy SEAL before I moved into the cybersecurity world. I've been damn good at it. Over the years, I'd left a trail of enemies behind me, dead enemies. And now it looked like I was about to add 2 more names to that list if they were actually trying to kill me. They were sloppy. I could tell that much. Arms dealers and their goons don't usually make such a mess. They don't just start shooting without announcing who they are, especially not at a former Navy SEAL turned cybersecurity specialist. But they had made the mistake of underestimating me. I fumbled with the cheap, pay-as-you-go phone I'd grabbed at the kiosk earlier. The guy at the counter hadn't seemed convinced by my story about a computer glitch at my bank, but $200 in cash had been enough to get me the phone and 3 hours of talk time. He probably reported me to his superiors, but I didn't blame him. The guy had probably sensed something was off, and I doubted he wanted to get tangled up in anything shady. I didn't care if he called it in. Those 3 hours were more time than I needed anyway. I doubted it would even take half of that to wrap this up. I grabbed my wallet, pulled out a torn business card, and punched the number into the phone. K2 Executive Services, a woman's voice answered sharply. I tried to keep my voice steady even though my nerves were a mess. I need help. My wife's trying to kill me. The line cut off with a sharp click. I leaned back, closing my eyes, cursing under my breath. I didn't even know where to go from here. This could very well be the end for me. It seemed like I'd have to take them both out myself. Consequences be damned. Then my phone buzzed in my hand, a text from an unknown number. It was just a link. With nothing to lose, I tapped it. The phone immediately began downloading an app. A few seconds later, a new icon appeared on the screen, a stylized K2. I pressed it, and the phone dialed K2 Executive Services once again. But this time, the voice on the other end sounded muffled, distorted, as if it was underwater. It was some kind of scrambler. Please hold your phone at arm's length and look into the screen, the voice instructed. I did as told, and the phone screen pulsed before flashing my image. It wasn't the most flattering picture. My face was gray with shock and barely contained rage, but it was enough for them. Name please? The voice asked after a pause. Dominic Carter, I replied. There was another brief silence, and then the voice came back. Checking your status. Armed, uninjured, but in need of immediate assistance. What is the nature of your situation? My wife is involved with an arms dealer named Ethan Hunter. They've been selling classified information I once had access to. I need to neutralize the threat. I could hear the click of keys on the other end, followed by a new voice. Please hold, they said, and the line switched to hold music. I was stunned to hear the girl from Ipanema, of all things. I stared at the phone, shaking my head. Really? But before I could dwell on it, the voice returned. Thank you for waiting. We have an asset available in your area. Move to the south entrance of the mall and wait near the men's restroom. The contractor will be there in 30 minutes. 30 minutes? I muttered under my breath. I may not have that long. They could be closing in on me right now. The voice was calm though. The contractor will arrange for immediate extraction if the situation escalates. Do you require medical assistance? No. I'm combat ready, I replied flatly. The line clicked off, the sound as final as the words I had just spoken. I stood up from the table and started walking as casually as possible, trying to blend in with the crowd, looking like any other busy shopper caught up in the holiday rush. The south entrance was about a quarter mile away. As I turned out of the food court, I looked back. There was no sign of pursuit. Good. I had a head start. But I wasn't about to relax just yet. I knew better than to drop my guard. Stores, restaurants, and clothing shops passed by, their displays shimmering in the bright lights. The holiday decorations were all around me, but none of that mattered now. I had to stay focused. I moved through the crowd, staying close to the edges, trying not to draw attention. It took almost 20 minutes, but I was getting close. I could already see the restroom sign ahead, and my pulse quickened as I got closer. Then, just as I was almost there, I felt a hand grip my right elbow, firm and unyielding. A family of 4 with kids bundled in bright coats shuffled past me, using promises of hot chocolate to keep the little ones in line. Keep moving, Mr. Carter, a voice murmured in a low, controlled tone. The accent was subtle but distinct, Eastern European, maybe Russian. I glanced over at the man. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit and a Blackwell overcoat, but even if I ignored the accent, something about him didn't fit the usual mold of Blackwell's muscle. He seemed different, more calculated. And he let me see the gun he had tucked inside his coat, a subcompact automatic aimed directly at me. It took a second, but then the memory hit me. I'd seen him during the ambush outside my house. The realization was like a punch to the gut. "It's Dominic," I muttered. "Very well, Dominic," he replied, his tone cold and businesslike. "Please keep moving. I'd rather not do this here in front of all these children, but I will if you force me." He fell silent as we passed a teenage girl, thin and awkward in a dark coat, her bright purple backpack slung carelessly over her shoulder. Her head was down, eyes glued to her phone, oblivious to the world around her. "Looks like you guys caught up quicker than I thought," I said, trying to gauge his reaction. He glanced at me almost with amusement. "Facial recognition programs in the security system for the bridge cameras. We planted it in this area months ago for another operation. Lucky for me it was still active and your direction was a perfect match. I found your car in the parking lot too." I noticed a family struggling as they pushed two small toddlers through the crowd. The kids were clearly at their limit, tantrums building up as the parents tried to soothe them. If I weren't in such a mess myself, I might have felt bad for them. The man shrugged as if indifferent to the chaos around us. "Those are the breaks," he said in a tone that might have sounded casual if it weren't for the deadly context. He was polite for a hired killer. Too polite. I was too cautious to make a move just yet though. He led me into a utility hallway across from the restroom. We walked down it until we reached a corner. I could feel the tension building. Time was running out. Without warning, he shoved me around the corner and pulled his gun out. A dull, heavy thud echoed through the hallway, and for a brief moment I thought I'd been shot. But no, I watched in shock as the man staggered forward and collapsed in a heap. Standing behind him, the teenage girl in the purple crew cap held a giant crescent wrench, which she swung with deadly precision. She looked at me for a split second, her expression as cold as ice, before turning her attention back to the man on the ground. She balanced the wrench casually across her shoulder like it was nothing. Crouching down, she checked his breathing and pupils with methodical efficiency. After a moment, she picked up his gun, cleared it with professional ease, and tucked it into her backpack. Then, almost as an afterthought, she pulled his wallet from his coat and slid it into a silvery envelope. A second later, she ripped the battery from his phone and tossed it into the nearest trash can. The phone followed, joining his wallet in the envelope. She stood up, staring at me with cold, calculating eyes. Then she extended a hand toward me. "Come with me if you want to live." I just stared at her, stunned. She smirked, eyes glinting. "I've always wanted to say that." She paused for a moment, then asked, "You hurt?" I shook my head. "No injuries. Just a burning desire for payback," I said, my voice icy and steady. Reaching into her backpack, she pulled out a small first aid kit and tossed it to me. "Good. We might need you at full capacity." "I'm your K2 contact," she said. "Call me Delaney. Pleasure to meet you. Now, can we get out of here before more of Blackwell's goons show up?" Her tone was grim, but there was a certain fire in her smile. I nodded, feeling the same resolve building in me. "Oh, we're going to do more than that," she said, a feral grin creeping across her face. "We're going to take the fight to them." As we left the mall, I told Delaney everything. The betrayal by Ashley, the classified information being sold to Blackwell, the attempt on my life. With every new detail, I saw the cold fury rising in Delaney's eyes, a mirror to my own. "So, what's the plan?" she asked as we reached a nondescript sedan parked in the parking garage. I slid into the passenger seat, my mind already spinning with 100 different ideas. "First, we need to secure the remaining evidence," I said, my voice steady. "I've got a hidden office at home with all the data I've collected on their operation. Then we take the fight to them, no mercy. No quarter." Delaney's grin was savage as she started the car. "I like the way you think, Dominic. Let's make these bastards regret the day they crossed you." The drive to my house was tense, the air thick with the knowledge that every shadow could conceal an enemy. But Delaney drove with the precision of someone who had lived through countless covert operations. As we turned onto my street, I spotted Veronica's new toy, a sleek Aston Martin, still parked in the driveway. "Nice car," I remarked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Delaney's eyes narrowed. "Gift from a friend?" I nodded, jaw clenched. Blackwell's idea of a gift. He likes to keep his assets happy. We parked a block away and approached the house on foot, using the cover of darkness and the neighboring houses to mask our movements. As we neared my front door, I could feel the weight of what was about to happen settle over me. I could see Ashley through the living room window, pacing back and forth, her phone pressed tightly to her ear. "Looks like someone's getting nervous," Delaney murmured under her breath. "What's the play?" I took a moment to think through our options. "We need that evidence," I said, my voice steady. "I'll create a distraction, draw her out. You slip in and secure the data from my office. It's behind a hidden panel in the study, third bookshelf from the left. War and Peace is the trigger. Delaney gave a sharp nod, her expression all business. And if she gets in my way? Do what you have to do, I replied, my voice cold but firm. Leave her breathing. I want answers before this is over. With a silent nod, Delaney melted into the shadows, moving around to the back of the house. I took a deep breath, bracing myself for the confrontation to come. Then, with deliberate steps, I walked up to the front door and rang the bell. The look of shock on Ashley's face when she opened the door was almost comical. Dominic? But how? She stammered. I pushed past her, entering the house, my eyes scanning for any immediate threats. Surprised to see me alive, darling? Her expression quickly shifted from shock to a practiced mask of concern. Dominic, thank God you're all right. I've been so worried when I heard about the attack. Save it, I cut her off, my voice as sharp as ice. I know everything, Ashley. About Blackwell. About the classified intel you've been selling. Did you really think you could keep this from me? Her face drained of color, the facade crumbling. You don't understand, Dominic. It's not what you think. Jonathan. Jonathan? I spat the name like a curse. On a first-name basis with the arms dealer now? How thoughtful of him to buy you that new car. I'm sure it wasn't just payment for betraying your country, and your husband. Her eyes darted around the room, clearly searching for an escape. Please just let me explain. You're in danger, Dominic. Jonathan has resources you can't even imagine. I stepped closer, my voice low and dangerous. I've faced worse, and I'm not alone in this. A flicker of fear crossed Ashley's face. What do you mean? Before I could respond, a muffled thud came from upstairs. Ashley's head whipped toward the sound. What was that? Is someone else here? I grabbed her arm, preventing her from investigating. Doesn't matter. You're not going anywhere, Ashley. It's time you faced the consequences of your actions. As if on cue, Delaney appeared at the top of the stairs, holding a small hard drive in her hand. Got it? We should move. Ashley's eyes widened in recognition. You're the girl from the mall. Who are you? What are you doing in my house? Delaney ignored her, addressing me instead. Perimeter's clear, but we shouldn't push our luck. What do you want to do with her? She nodded toward Ashley. I thought for a moment, then made my decision. She's coming with us. Blackwell will be looking for her, and I want to know everything she knows. Ashley's voice trembled with panic. Dominic, please. You don't know what you're getting into. Jonathan will. I tightened my grip on her arm. You can try. But first, you're going to tell us everything. Every detail. Every contact. Every dirty little secret. And God help you if I think you're lying. As we hustled Ashley toward the car, I could see the reality of her situation sinking in. The woman I had once loved, the life we'd built together, it had all been a lie. But I pushed any lingering sentiment aside. There would be time for regrets later. Right now, I had a mission to complete. And a score to settle. Delaney took the wheel once again, navigating us smoothly through the quiet suburban streets. In the back seat, Ashley sat silent, her face a mask of fear and resignation. I kept my eyes on the road behind us, watching for any sign of pursuit. Where are we going? Ashley finally whispered. Somewhere safe, I replied, not bothering to look at her. Somewhere Blackwell won't find us until we're ready for him. As the city lights faded behind us, a grim sense of satisfaction settled in. The game had changed, and now I was the one calling the shots. Ashley and Blackwell had no idea what was coming for them, and I intended to keep it that way until it was far too late for them to do anything about it. The road stretched out before us, dark and full of promise. Whatever came next, I was ready. They had tried to destroy me, to take everything I had built. Now it was my turn, and I would show no mercy. We arrived at the safe house, and I leaned against the wall, my eyes fixed on Ashley as she paced the small room like a caged animal. The last 24 hours had been a whirlwind, betrayal, violence, and cold calculation. Now, in the stark light of morning, I could see the toll it had taken on her. Good. Let her feel just a fraction of the pain she'd caused. You can't keep me here forever, Dominic, Ashley spat, her earlier pleas for understanding replaced by venom. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I focused on the array of security monitors I had set up. The safe house was a fortress, every entrance covered by multiple layers of protection. If Blackwell's men somehow found us, they'd have one hell of a fight on their hands. Delaney's voice crackled over the comm unit. Perimeter's clear. No sign of activity within a 5-meter radius. Copy that, I replied, my eyes still trained on the monitors. I replied, my voice steady. Keep your eyes open. These bastards are slippery. I could feel Ashley's gaze burning into me as I turned to face her. The hatred in her eyes was like a physical force. You have no idea what you're up against, Dominic, she spat, her voice dripping with venom. Jonathan will find us. And when he does, he'll wish he'd never heard the name Dominic Carter. I cut her off, my tone as cold as ice. Your boyfriend made a fatal mistake when he decided to use my wife against me. And you? I let out a harsh laugh. You're even more of a fool for going along with it. Her face twisted in rage. You arrogant bastard. You think you're so much better than everyone else, don't you? Always the big hero, the perfect soldier. Did it ever occur to you that maybe I wanted more than being a trophy wife to a man who cared more about his work than his marriage? A flicker of anger sparked in me, but I quickly shoved it down. So you decided to sell out your country to sleep with a man who deals in death and destruction? Tell me, Ashley, was it worth it? Was the money, the thrill, worth throwing away everything we built together? For a brief moment, I saw a crack in her carefully crafted facade. A flicker of doubt in her eyes, but it disappeared just as quickly, replaced by a cold, defiant stare. You don't understand, Dominic, she said, her voice trembling but hard. Jonathan offered me a chance at real power. Not just being some window dressing for your career. And the information we sold, it was going to change the world. I couldn't help but laugh. Oh, I'm sure it would have made a difference. More weapons in the hands of criminals, more innocent lives destroyed. You're delusional if you think Blackwell cares about anything other than lining his own pockets. Before Ashley could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. But the encryption was unmistakable. It was my contact from the task force. We have a location on Blackwell. Private island off the coast. Major arms deal going down in 48 hours. The rush of anticipation was immediate. This was it, the chance to take down Blackwell and his entire operation in one fell swoop. I looked back at Ashley, a cold smile tugging at my lips. Looks like your boyfriend's luck is about to run out. Her eyes widened with fear. Dominic, please. You don't have to do this. We can still work something out. I'll tell you everything I know. Just don't go after Jonathan. He'll kill you. I stepped closer, my voice low and dangerous. No, Ashley. He'll try. And he'll fail. And when the dust settles, you'll both rot in a cell for the rest of your miserable lives. I turned away, already mentally preparing for the mission ahead. Ashley's pleading voice faded into the background as I focused on the task at hand. There was no room for hesitation. No place for mercy. Blackwell and his operation had to be dismantled, and I would be the one to do it. Hours passed in a blur of preparation. Weapons were checked and double-checked, intel poured over, every detail of Blackwell's compound committed to memory. The task force had assembled, a group of seasoned operatives from various agencies, all united in their determination to bring down one of the world's most notorious arms dealers. As night fell, I made one final check of the safe house's security. Ashley sat in the corner, silent, her face hollow with fear. The fight was gone from her. I felt nothing as I looked at her, the woman I had once loved, now a complete stranger. A traitor to be dealt with. I'm leaving, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. When this is over, the authorities will come for you. I suggest you start thinking about how to save what's left of your miserable life. She looked up at me, her eyes red-rimmed, hollow. Dominic, I'm sorry for everything. I paused at the door but didn't bother to turn around. Save it for the judge, Ashley. Your apologies mean nothing to me. With that, I stepped out into the night, leaving behind the wreckage of my old life, and embracing the cold certainty of the mission ahead. The journey to Blackwell's Island was a study in stealth and precision. Under the cover of darkness, our team approached an especially modified submersible, its silent engines cutting through the inky water. The weight of my tactical gear was a familiar comfort, each piece of equipment a trusted tool in what promised to be a brutal fight. As we neared the shore, I signaled for the team to surface. One by one, we emerged from the water like wraiths, our black wetsuits blending seamlessly with the night. The island loomed before us, a dark mass against the star-studded sky. Alpha Team, sound off, I whispered into my comms. Clicks answered me, each one representing a member of my assault squad. Good. Everyone's in position and ready to move. Bravo Team, status? In position and ready to provide overwatch, came the quiet reply. Our snipers were already in place, their high-powered rifles trained on key points around the compound. I took a deep breath, centering myself for what was to come. This wasn't just about taking down Blackwell or avenging my own betrayal. It was about stopping a man who had caused untold suffering, who had profited from chaos and death. And I would see it done. No matter the cost. I spoke in a low, steady voice. Blackwell is the primary target. We want him alive if possible, but don't take any unnecessary risks. Anyone else is expendable. Clear? A chorus of affirmatives came through the comms. I nodded, satisfied. These were professionals, the best of the best. They understood the stakes. All right, let's move. We advanced through the dense jungle surrounding the compound, our movements silent and purposeful. Years of training kicked in, every sense heightened and alert for the slightest sign of danger. The occasional chirp of a night bird or rustling of leaves in the breeze were the only sounds that broke the eerie stillness. As we neared the perimeter, I held up a fist, signaling the team to halt. Ahead, barely visible in the gloom, was the first line of defense, a high wall topped with razor wire, patrolled by armed guards. I gave the signal to Bravo team to take out the sentries. Two muffled cracks split the air, so quiet they might have been mistaken for branches snapping underfoot. The guards crumpled silently, their bodies caught and lowered by their teammates before they could make a sound. Clear, came the whisper over the comms. We moved forward, scaling the wall with practiced ease. Once over, we split into two-man teams, each heading for a pre-designated entry point. My partner, Martinez, a former Delta Force operator, fell into step beside me as we approached a side entrance to the main building. The lock was no match for his electronic bypass tool. Within seconds we were inside, the cool, air-conditioned interior a stark contrast to the humid night outside. I signaled for Martinez to take point, covering his advance as we moved deeper into the compound. The intel had been solid. The layout matched our briefing perfectly, allowing us to navigate the maze-like corridors with confidence. As we neared the central area where Blackwell was likely to be, the sounds of voices drifted toward us. Multiple languages, the clinking of glasses, the arms deal was in full swing. I tapped my comms 3 times, the signal to converge and prepare for the breach. Within moments, I sensed rather than saw the rest of the team taking up positions around the room. We were in place, ready to spring the trap on my mark. 3, 2, 1, execute. The world exploded into chaos. Flashbangs detonated, filling the room with blinding light and deafening noise. We burst in, weapons at the ready, shouting commands in multiple languages. FBI on the ground now. Interpol, hands where we can see them. Most of the arms buyers dropped immediately, stunned by the sudden assault. A few tried to resist, reaching for weapons, but they were quickly subdued. In the midst of the chaos, I searched for one face, Jonathan Blackwell. I spotted him near the back of the room, trying to slip away in the confusion. Not this time, you bastard. I charged forward, dodging panicked arms dealers and flying furniture. Blackwell saw me coming, his eyes widening in recognition and fear. He turned to run, but I was faster. I tackled him hard, driving him to the ground with all my weight behind it. He struggled, landing a solid elbow to my ribs, but I barely felt it through the surge of adrenaline. It's over, Blackwell, I growled, pinning him face down on the marble floor. You're done. He continued to thrash, spitting curses in multiple languages. I wrenched his arms behind his back, perhaps with more force than strictly necessary, and slapped on a pair of reinforced cuffs. As I hauled him to his feet, I leaned in close, my voice low and menacing. You made a big mistake coming after me and my family. I hope it was worth it. The fear in his eyes told me all I needed to know. He had underestimated me, thought he could use Ashley to get to me without consequences. But now, as the reality of his situation set in, I could see the dawning realization that he had fatally miscalculated. I shoved him toward Martinez, who took custody of the prisoner. Around us, the rest of the team was securing the other arms dealers and gathering evidence. The operation had been a complete success. As the adrenaline began to ebb, I took a moment to survey the scene. Years of work, months of personal anguish, all culminating in this moment. Blackwell's empire was in ruins, his buyers in custody, and a treasure trove of intelligence on global arms trafficking now in our hands. I felt no elation, no sense of triumph. Just a grim satisfaction that justice had been served and a dangerous threat neutralized. There would be time for reflection later. For now, there was still work to be done. I keyed my comms, connecting to Task Force headquarters. This is Alpha 1. Target secured. I repeat, Blackwell is in custody. Operation successful. The response was immediate. Copy that, Alpha 1. Excellent work. Extraction team is en route. Secure the site and prepare for debrief. I acknowledged the order and turned back to the task at hand. The night was far from over, but the hardest part was done. Blackwell was finished, and soon Ashley would face her own reckoning. I moved through the compound, overseeing the collection of evidence and the processing of prisoners. A small, cold smile tugged at my lips. They had tried to destroy me, to use me for their own gain. Instead, they had only sealed their own fates. Let them rot in prison, I thought. Let them live with the knowledge that they brought this upon themselves. As for me, I had a job to finish, a life to rebuild, and I would do it without a shred of remorse for the choices I had made. The extraction went smoothly. Our team and our prisoners were loaded onto waiting helicopters as the first light of dawn began to streak the sky. As we lifted off, I watched Blackwell's island compound recede into the distance, knowing it would soon be swarming with forensics teams and intelligence analysts combing through every scrap of information we'd seized. The flight back to the mainland was a blur of fatigue and post-mission adrenaline crash. I managed to catch a few moments of restless sleep, my mind still racing with the events of the past few days. When we touched down at a secure military facility, I was alert and ready for the next phase. Blackwell was whisked away for immediate interrogation. I knew I wouldn't be allowed in the room, too much personal involvement, but that was fine by me. I had other business to attend to. I made my way to the command center, where the task force leaders were already assembling for a preliminary debrief. As I entered, heads turned and I saw looks of respect, and even a touch of awe, on some faces. Good. Let them see what happens when you cross the wrong person. Thorne, the lead agent, a grizzled veteran named Harding, greeted me with a nod. Hell of a job out there. Initial reports are already coming in. Looks like we've got enough to put Blackwell away for multiple lifetimes, not to mention his buyers. I allowed myself a small, grim smile. Good. What about stateside? Any movement on Ashley? Harding's expression turned serious. We've got a team en route to the safe house now. She'll be in custody within the hour. I nodded, feeling a cold satisfaction settle over me. I want to be there when they bring her in. Harding looked like he was about to object, but something in my expression must have changed his mind. All right. But you're strictly hands-off, understand? You've done your part. Let the system handle the rest. I didn't bother to respond. We both knew that the system was often flawed, manipulated by those with money and connections. But I had no intention of taking matters into my own hands. Ashley would face justice one way or another. The drive to the safe house felt interminable. By the time we arrived, local law enforcement and FBI agents had already secured the perimeter. I stepped out of the SUV, my body aching from the night's exertions, but my mind sharp and focused. As I approached the house, the front door opened. 2 agents emerged, Ashley between them, her hands cuffed behind her back. She looked small, defeated. Nothing like the confident woman I had married. When she saw me, her eyes widened, a mix of fear and something else, resignation perhaps. I stopped a few feet away, my face impassive. It's over, Ashley. Blackwell's in custody. His entire operation has been dismantled. She said nothing for a long moment, just stared at me with those hollow eyes. Finally she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. What happens now? Now, I felt a surge of cold anger. You face the consequences of your actions. Treason. Espionage. Conspiracy. I hope it was worth it. Ashley's shoulders slumped. Dominic? Save it, I cut her off. I don't want to hear your excuses or your apologies. You made your choice. Now live with it. I turned away, unable to look at her any longer, as the agents led her to a waiting car. I heard her call out one last time. Dominic, please. I'm sorry for everything. I didn't turn back. Her words meant nothing to me now. The woman I had loved, the life we had built together, it was all ashes now. Destroyed by her greed and betrayal. As the car drove away, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It wasn't over. There would be trials, debriefings, endless paperwork. But the worst was behind me. I had survived. I had turned the tables on those who sought to destroy me, and I had done it without compromising who I was. Harding approached, a look of grudging respect on his weathered face. You did good, Thorne. Not many could have pulled this off. I nodded, accepting the compliment for what it was. What's next? He raised an eyebrow. Next. You've got about a mountain of paperwork to get through. Then I'd suggest a long vacation. You've earned it? I shook my head. I don't need a vacation. I need to get back to work. Harding studied me for a long moment, then nodded. All right. I'll see what I can do. But Thorne, take some time to process all this. It's been one hell of a ride. As he walked away, I stood there watching the sun climb higher in the sky. Process it? There was nothing to process. I had done what needed to be done. Nothing more, nothing less. Veronica and Blackwell had made their choices, and now they would face the consequences. As for me, I was ready for whatever came next. The betrayal had cut deep, but it had also freed me. No more divided loyalties, no more secrets eating away at me. I was a weapon, honed and primed, ready to be aimed at the next threat. The following weeks were a blur of debriefings, court appearances, and endless meetings with lawyers. I provided all the evidence I had gathered against Veronica, ensuring that she would face the full weight of her crimes. The divorce proceedings were swift and merciless. I made sure she wouldn't see a dime of our shared assets. Throughout it all, I remained focused and driven. There was no room for doubt or regret. Veronica and Blackwell had made their choices, and now they were paying for them. As for me, I was already looking ahead, ready for the next challenge. Months passed, and slowly the dust began to settle. I found myself in a new apartment in Rome, the Eternal City. A fitting backdrop for this new chapter in my life. The events of the past year had changed me, hardened me in ways I was still discovering, but I had also found a strange sense of peace. It was a quiet evening when my phone rang, the secure line I kept for official business. I answered without hesitation. Thorne, the voice on the other end was familiar, my handler from the agency. We've got a situation brewing in Buenos Aires. Need someone with your particular skill set. You interested? I felt a surge of anticipation, the familiar thrill of a new mission. Details classified, need-to-know basis only, but I could already tell from the tone that it was big, potentially bigger than Blackwell. I didn't hesitate. I'm in. When do I leave? Wheels up in 6 hours. I'll send a car. As I packed my bag, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. The man staring back at me was different from the one who had stumbled upon his wife's betrayal all those months ago. Harder. Colder, perhaps. But also more focused, more certain of his place in the world. I was no longer weighed down by secrets and divided loyalties. The betrayal had cut deep, but it had also set me free. Now I was living as my true self. A warrior. A protector. A force to be reckoned with. As I boarded the plane to Buenos Aires, I felt a sense of anticipation building. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them head-on. My past was behind me, the lessons learned etched into my very being. And my future, it was wide open, full of possibilities and purpose. The plane taxied down the runway, gathering speed for takeoff. As we lifted into the air, I settled back into my seat, a small, determined smile playing at the corners of my mouth. The game was afoot once more, and this time I was playing for keeps. Veronica's betrayal, Jonathan's attempt to murder me, it was all in the past. I had emerged victorious in that battle, and now the future seemed bright, full of hope. And with that, this chapter of my story comes to an end.